Making sense of today's issues. 702 Town Hall with Karima Brown. Hashtag 702 Town Hall.
Welcome to the second installment of our presidential town hall discussions. It's just gone 8:05. You are listening to a live broadcast of the Karima Brown Show, and of course you are listening to 702. Now, for the first time, the African National Congress has 7 candidates vying for the top position. 702 has town hall discussions with each of them planned leading up to the much anticipated December elective conference, and we've just heard in the news it's under 50 days away. I don't know about you, but I am getting really, really excited. The main purpose, of course, of the town hall is to provide a platform for the presidential candidates to engage with 702 landers on key issues as well as engage with stakeholders. Now, tonight, our guest is, of course, Treasurer General Dr. Zweli Mkhize. You can, of course, hear the show on 702 if you're in the Jersey area on the regular dial via the live stream, and you can also listen on the DSTV audio bouquet on channel 856 or connect with us via our WhatsApp line, that number 072 702 1702. And you can engage with us on Twitter at Radio 702. Remember to include our hashtag when sharing your comments. Dr. Mkhize, thank you so very much for joining us here in this historic second town hall. Over to you for your opening statements.
Well, thank you very much, Karima, and all the listeners and the members of the audience. As you know, my name is Zweli Mkhize. I'm the Treasurer General of the African National Congress. I am amongst those who have lifted their hands up to say that will be available for nomination. And I want to briefly indicate that one has come a long way in the African National Congress. I have been in the ANC almost for 39 years as a student activist, working in the underground in the MK, gone to exile and back to the country and served both in government and in the ANC structures, literally at all levels, at the branch, region, province, and now at national level. And this, I believe, has given us quite a lot of experience in being able to manage and handle a lot of issues that relate to the African National Congress. I've also worked in government, and I think what one wants to bring into this portfolio is the experience that's been gained over the years, and particularly a kind of leadership style that is a balanced leadership where we're able to allow adequate consultation and also being firm and decisive to take the decisions and move on, but move to the point of ensuring implementation and also monitoring the decisions so that we are able to ensure the outcomes. This has been my style. This has been what I have learned over the years. But secondly, I think it's important to indicate that I have been approached by a number of branches and leaders who have felt that it was important for me to be available. And this has to do with part of the experience in dealing with the difficult situation of a complex organization here where we've had factions, divisions, infighting, but we're able to deal with that and unite the organization, calm everybody down, and be able to focus all of us to deal with the challenges and also deal with the work of the organization. During the last term, when I was the chairperson of the ANC in the province, we were able to score huge increases in the support of the ANC, and some of this experience we believe we needed. So going forward, one is looking at it as something concrete. I think one needs to be able to focus on what we can do to rebuild, strengthen, and unify the ANC, the issue of unity being very important. Secondly, to focus on creation of a capable state and strengthening governance and also ensuring a fight against corruption. And thirdly, to deal with the issues of the economy, creation of growth, job creation and jobs, as well as radical economic transformation. And therefore, with all of these, I believe that I have had adequate experience to be able to serve the ANC at all levels. And I believe that with the coming conference, I will be one of those who can contribute in building the ANC and making it stronger.
Well, there you've heard it. Dr. Zweli Mkhize is sketching out his history in the African National Congress, also his record in government, and of course the three things around which his campaign is being built: unity of the African National Congress, a plan to grow the economy, and of course also steps to stabilize government. But talk is one thing. It's obviously what we do and what you're going to be doing, Dr. Mkhize, that is going to be the big determinant factor. So in a minute, tell me, why do you want to be president of the African National Congress? What is it that you think you bring to the ANC that distinguishes you from Cyril Ramaphosa, from Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, from Lindiwe Sisulu, and all the others who believe they too can lead this complex organization?
It's exactly the issues. Firstly, is the ability to unify the organization. And secondly, is the focus on the creation of a capable state, and also thirdly, the issue of building the economy. I would like to make those as the major contributions that one wants to bring into this particular portfolio.
Now, your supporters are wearing T-shirts that has the word unity on the front. But of course, if we look at the province from which you come, it's a province that is rent down the middle. We've got a situation where your comrades have gone to the courts because they were unhappy with the special conference in 2015. We've had a court decision. We've had decisions to appeal that decision, and of course, counter moves. How do you claim to be the unity candidate when many say that it's under your leadership as the provincial chair that KwaZulu-Natal actually became factionalized and institutional factions took root to such an extent that you have political killings that is still not solved in a fundamental way? We don't have people who have been arrested and convicted for those killings.
I think you should check your history a little bit more carefully. It is not correct what you have just stated. It's not correct what you have said. I left KwaZulu-Natal in 2013. I was let me take it back a little bit. The real issue, when there was political violence in KwaZulu-Natal in the 80s, I was part of the teams that dealt with it. There was violence between ANC and IFP. I was at the center with a lot of leadership dealing with that. Then thereafter, there was a problem of violence inside the ANC by members of the ANC. I was also amongst those who were leading in that because I was in the Midlands leadership. When we integrated the provinces, we got that settled down. You remember we had councillors killed, we had a lot of people killed, and this was strife inside the ANC supporting areas. And then we then had our own internal factional battles. And I can tell you this because in 2002, this was the one time where myself and Comrade Bunde were contesting for chairpersonship. And this is the one time where we walked into the hall and found that the two sides in the hall were singing one against the other like that on our names, and it was almost divided, almost broken down and disrupted. We got in, we dealt with the issue, we calmed everybody down, and from that time on, we were able to get an ANC that was united. From that point on, the factions disappeared, we worked together up until Comrade Sbu left in 2008, and then I took over as chair. But beyond that point, there was no problems. We had a formula of how we dealt with the problems. I can talk to you about that if you have time. But beyond that point, we then increased the support of the ANC. It was in 2013 when I left. The problems in KwaZulu-Natal of the ANC started way after around 2014. Then probably 2014 towards 2015, the real issues that brought us to the tension we have, we tried as the NEC to deal with them over 2015, and it culminated in the conference and at the end of 2015. So it is not correct that I was present at the time. I was no longer in there. But that is not to abdicate responsibility as part of the leadership of the ANC and someone from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm committed to working on that. I actually did, at a personal level, meet with the comrades who had just been out of the NEC, of the PEC, Comrade Senzo, and some of the comrades who were part of that, and the current leadership, to try and broker an arrangement. of course, it became a bit more of a complex matter, so the whole NEC is now getting involved in that. So I can argue with you to say that, firstly, whilst I was there, we made sure that all the factions were dismantled. We went out on a campaign where we said, myself and Comrades Bu, you can divide the ANC on any issue, but not on our names. And that was a strong campaign that we took that stopped the infighting. This issue that we are facing now is quite a pity, and I believe that we will be able to deal with it because most of those who are in leadership today and those who were part of the leadership in 2013 were those who were part of the solutions that we created. Now, the killings are something else.
Dr. Mkhize, of course, we're going to take a short break quickly. It's just gone 8:15. We are in conversation with Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who is, of course, a presidential candidate in the race to succeed President Jacob Zuma come the December elective conference. You can participate in this conversation on the Johannesburg line 011-883-0702. You can also send me a WhatsApp message 072-702-1702 and send us an SMS on 31702. But the bulk of the time we are going to give to our live studio audience who have taken out the time to come and participate in that conversation. We're going to be taking a short break. When we come back, we'll be taking questions from the floor. Dr. Mkhize, before the break, we spoke about your role in trying to establish unity in the province. And of course, we took the break just as you were talking about the political killings. This is a province that has the Moerane Commission that is sitting. We've heard granular details of what happens at places like Cleveland's Hostel. We've also seen very few arrests, and the police minister saying, whilst it's easy to get those who pull the trigger, it's a lot harder to get to those who plan the killings. And of course, the people who plan the killings are in the African National Congress. How did we get to this?
Look, I don't know we can say all of them are within the African National Congress. Part of the complexity of Cleveland's and some of the hostile areas is the way that whole area is operating. There are lots of gangs or gang-like conduct and people there who are shacklords and so on. So there's quite a lot of criminality that exists there. But it's linked also with the fact that because of its difficulty in being able to walk in and traverse through different dwellings there, so it's a hideout for hitmen and so on. Because of that, it tends to have a large number of people who hide there and are involved in killings, as it were. So the main issue for me is more effective policing into that area, and also a strong administration, particularly Cleveland and the other hostile areas. It's very difficult to police inside because of the nature of the settlement inside there.
But if I can interrupt you, a satellite police station was actually put there, and the very day when that happened, another killing happened.
Yes, part of the problem also is that people there live in fear, so they are not very free to go out, because an easier thing to happen is not so much to go and report the case, it's for the witness to disappear. And people talk about it. In some of those areas, there's still a culture that is a lingering culture of the past, where there was impunity. People can disappear and they can act on witnesses even before the court case lands in court. And the fact that people can easily get bail and come out, so it makes it very, very difficult to deal with killings there. The other one in the area of Umzimkhulu, look, there's been a lot of allegations that have been raised around issues of corruption, issues around, people being involved in procurement irregularities. So we have said as ANC, one, that the ANC leadership should go in there and deal with political tensions so that we can exclude those as a basis of the problem. But secondly, we need the investigation into the municipality, some form of auditing that will be able to expose irregularities so we can follow where the money has been lost and follow the leads from the community. But thirdly, strong investigations. We need that, and we need the community to feel confident to come up and tell everyone what they know about these killings. In the funeral of Comrade Makaqwa, a lot of statements were made, and I wondered to myself, how come this information is not being given to the police? Are the police available? Can we make sure that all of the communities tell everything that they know, because it's a small area, and I think it can be cordoned off, it can be dealt with, and it's something that we need strong and firm leadership to deal with it and stamp it out.
You're discussing the conditions in communities. You're talking about one of the drivers for the conflict, which is, of course, corruption. But what about ANC culture? What is it inside the African National Congress in a place like KwaZulu-Natal that allows comrade to sit and plot the death and the killing of another comrade?
Well, this is a very difficult issue, because we have not got a situation where you have found, all the answers to the deaths that we have had. There have been instances where people were involved in murders. Whilst I was there, I remember some of them were councillors. It was sheer competition of people who don't understand the culture of the organization, and they were arrested. This was done within a very short space of time.
So this is people killing each other because they want to be councillors?
There are those situations where people would kill each other simply because of the contest for the position. And this has got to do with our, a need for us to deepen discipline inside the organization and political education. So people must know, when you get elected, it's not about your own living. It is about, serving people, so that people must not, feel that, the easiest way to get onto a position is to kill the one who's occupying it at that point. We've also had very embarrassing situations in the lead up to the conference, to the municipal elections, where people were shot when they were coming out of meetings. Some even were women, and all of this was quite shocking. And we still hope that all of this will need to be solved. But where we find clear evidence, the ANC is able to act on those. The difficulty is when people are not able to be found, and we are not able to get an open, confession or evidence to indicate where the killers were and what kind of planning went on and all of that. But I still believe that it's something that we need to work hard to uproot, because we've gotten out of this era of violence in KwaZulu-Natal, and we need to stop it so that we can continue and carry on this thing. What we also found was also an issue, is that there's a proliferation of guns, and the hitmen that we have in the area. During the days of faction fights, people who were hired guns were the ones who were involved. And then
where does these guns come from, Dr. Mkhize?
Oh, I don't know. I think there's a lot of guns that are moving around. It's actually illegally smuggled. I wouldn't know where they would have come from. But in the faction fights, it was the same kind of group. In the warlords were similar, kind of people who were involved. In taxi violence, same people. And also in bank heists, it was almost the same people. So we used to have a saying that we needed to put all the hitmen onto retirement and make sure that there is no basis. You remove the guns, but also we must have a very strong intelligence networks that must be able to alert us ahead of crime being committed.
Now, the question of the intelligence structures is, of course, a bone of contention. It's a bone of contention within the African National Congress. You've had different factions complaining that the police are doing the political work of particular factions. You've had leaders of the alliance coming out and saying that the security forces are being used in the factional battles inside the African National Congress. You want to be president of the African National Congress. How are you going to deal with the politicization of the security structures in our country that in many ways have gotten to a state where people literally believe these institutions are captured?
Well, I think that when we have to deal with the issue of policing, we need to ensure that we emphasize on the professionalism in the police, so that people who get appointed are people who have got a clear, proper training in the fields that they are involved. But that there should also be strong supervision over some of the crime crime intelligence and intelligence structures, because a lot of mischief comes from some of those elements. There's a book that was written by one of the generals, Boysen, who actually explained how my name at some point was out in the public to say we're involved in a plot with Tokyo Sehwale, with a number of other comrades, something that was completely fictional. But then they said that the people who had done that were police who were abusing their own slush funds, but in order to justify it, then they did those kinds of things. I think it's aberrant.
But why does that kind of conspiracy theory land so well in the African National Congress? I mean, we have a situation where the president is being accused of using a fake intelligence report to recall a former finance minister and his deputy. We have a situation where explosive allegations are being made in various books that are coming out. The president's keepers is one of them, Jacques Pau, making allegations that the president is consorting with gangsters. Why is the ANC unable to discern fact from fiction when it comes to its leadership?
Well, I can't answer for all these latest revelations, as it were. But the ones that we had been through, we discussed them and we are able to dismiss them, to say this is not true, this is fictional, and we must dismiss it. So when we've got an opportunity, some of the problem is that some of these reports do not make themselves available at a public level where everybody can talk about them. Somebody might just get it and then talk about a report that they've seen. But in our case, when we find it and we have got a report, we do talk about it and dismiss it. What I think needs to be done is to take it further, to go into those individuals who are involved in the collation of those reports, act on them, discipline them, and put them aside, because it is quite possible for people involved in this kind of work to just turn around to be peddlers that really use the information just for their own, to get money for themselves. And this needs to be removed because it makes mockery of the policing and the intelligence processes. But inside the ANC, when there is a clear report that we have seen, we do talk about it and we can dismiss it to say this is wrong, this is untrue, and so on. But where it becomes difficult is when we hear about the reports, but we don't know what the sources are. We've not even read the report or even seen the report.
Now, today, of course, in the last few days, we've had, since the weekend, explosive reports contained in the book written by investigative journalist Jacques Pau, where effectively we are told that the president was in fact employed in a company, that he is a tax dodger, that his taxes are not up to date, and that he is described by one of the gangsters in the book, Glenn Agliotti, as a gangster like one of us. Surely it is distressing, Dr. Mkhize, to hear that being said about the president of our country. And of course, the presidency has not said that the reports are untrue. The presidency hasn't indicated that it's going to sue the Sunday Times.
Well, I wouldn't be able to talk on behalf of the president. I can say that those reports were pretty disturbing, and that insofar as the aspect that related to tax, I saw a portion of the statement that did dismiss it from the presidency. So one can only hope that there will be the necessary actions taken to dismiss those issues, or to take them forward if then they need to be taken forward. But because these are just reports that have come recently, I've never read the book, but I've only seen some of the statements. So to be able to make a commentary that is firm on a matter like that is a bit tricky at this stage, because it's all fresh. We don't know what is what. But I think that from the point of view of the presidency, they would probably have to take the action on those matters.
All right, it's just gone 8:30. We're going to be taking a short break. When we come back, we're going to be throwing the floor open for questions.
Hi, thank you. It's Emil Amro here from the Huffington Post, South Africa. Thank you for taking my question. Dr. Mkhize, you've been preaching unity in the ANC for quite some time, but how practical is this idea? I mean, in the party, you have widening rifts, more so now with the presidential race. The reality is the Zuma faction in the party are die-hard supporters. I mean, supporters who are gunning for top spots and won't disappear if things don't go their way in December. In light of this, can you break down systematically, step by step, how you will bring about unity considering this? And also just a quick one, if things don't go your way in December, what's next for Dr. Zweli Mkhize?
All right, I'm going to get the other two persons to ask their questions, and Dr. Mkhize will answer them in batches of 3. Can I have the second question, please? The lady in the
my name is Loiso. I am a member of the ANC from 4 Ways, Ward 115. The question I have for the TG is that most candidates have been preaching a message of saying unity will be discussed after the voting in Nasrec, to a certain extent to say towards the national elections. However, we've noted that he's been preaching unity before. Mine is to get an understanding. Does unity in this context mean that you can unify the organization only if you are the president of the organization? And if you'll allow me, Karima, I've got another question. South Africa is a very youthful country. I just want to get a sense, what is the doctor's view on integrating young people into all the structures of the organization? Thank you.
All right, can we have the last one, the gentleman in the blue suit?
Hi, my name is Bandile Hatebe. I'm in the National Executive of the Progressive Youth in Business. Perhaps as a disclaimer, let me say this. You would have to be visiting South Africa from Mars to not realize the progress that has been made in the last 2 decades or so. But being critical of the progress that the African National Congress has delivered, we then need to recognize the fact that we have left a lot of people behind that we should have brought with us. There are people who the opportunities of democracy remain a dream, a far-fetched dream that they will never realize or they have not realized. And certainly there is a growing inequality that to some of us was grossly expressed this Monday when you saw a grouping of Afrikaners blocking our highways, showing the middle finger to the democracy we've created, because at the back of their arrogance sits their ownership of the economy. And because they own the economy, they're then able to do the things that they've done. Now, to a point that it hurt so much to some of us that we started asking ourselves whether or not we might have suspended the arms struggle too early, because that kind of arrogance is not consistent with the democracy in the country we seek to create. Now the question is this, to the TG, how do we create an environment where we restore the dignity of the black majority that remains the suffering majority in this country? How do we get to a point where we actually take over the levers of the economy and create this society that restores dignity on our people and not this utopia that we're currently living under? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the questions. TG, can we start with the questions around unity?
Yes. No, thank you very much for the questions on unity. I think we start by affirming the fact that the African National Congress was built on the basis of unity. It was the unity of all the African people in this country. As we say, it was meant to unify all the people of South Africa, black people in general and Africans in particular. It remains the rock upon which the ANC was founded, and therefore it is something that we cannot have, that if there is no unity, there is a huge threat to the African National Congress. And in the National Executive Committee of August, it was discussed that we need to work on creating unity in the African National Congress and making sure that the process leading towards the conference must be a unifying experience and that the conference must emerge with a strong and united ANC. So this message is not just about Zweli Mkhize, it's not about just one group of people, it is about all the members. Actually, as far as I would be concerned, this message should be coming from all the leaders of the African National Congress at all times, and particularly now when there are talks of splits, talks of factions, talks of groups of people who are mobilizing with a lot of tension on the ground. So the way to go about it, I think firstly is to talk about it and make sure that all those who are out in public, talking about the issue of the conference, are making are sending the message that we must build and we must bring unity of the ANC on board. The issue of, there are various ways of dealing with this. Excuse me. Excuse me. The way to unite the ANC is to create a leadership that is inclusive, that does not exclude anyone, that does not only base itself on a list that exclude others and you only get elected simply because you are on the one, you are on the one slate. We have to dismantle the factions and in ensure that there's no slate politics.
But Dr.
That way,
Mkhize,
yes.
with respect,
Sure.
I think nobody's going to argue with that objective. It's the how, right? Yes. And the how becomes difficult when you have ANC members who define themselves outside of the constitution of the country, who wants to govern illegally, like Minister Batabeli Dlamini, who wants to precipitate another grants crisis because she doesn't want to comply with the Constitutional Court and what it has said on how she must go about matters. How do you build unity? No, how do you build unity,
that is
Dr.
different,
Mkhize,
Karima.
with people who are inevitably going to make the ANC come up against the very constitution that it gifted the country?
Right. Now, that's different. What he's asking is, between now and getting to the conference, how do you deal with this? The one issue which I need to explain is that it's important to understand that those leaders excuse me, of the ANC who are out there have got various degrees of support. We need to find a way to bring them together so that they must operate together. So when we are getting people standing as candidates of one form or another, they must be prepared to lead, they must be prepared to be led, they must be prepared to lead with others. And that way, you will find that collectively they will be, they will be able to have the collective confidence of the party. It means also that between now and the conference, a lot of engagements must happen. And the engagement must not be happening only on the basis that only so-and-so can be your president. It must be on the basis of what is best for the ANC under the circumstances. And that is what we need to discuss. And at this point, there must be all sorts of engagements so that we must reduce the tension. By the time we get to the conference, we do not have so much of hostilities amongst members of one organization. We need to accept also that all of these members are part of the ANC. They must continue to be part of the ANC after the conference, and we must continue to respect each other, whether we've won or lost. So what happens to Zweli Mkhize, it is not so much an issue of what happens to Zweli Mkhize as to what happens to the African National Congress. And the members of the ANC, the delegates, must pack those members up in a way they see best, and their word is final, and all those who get to be nominated must accept that the word of the conference is final, and that's the leadership that we must have. That way we can bring a lot more unity. But it means we must be able to be open, to accept criticism, and make sure that we're open for everybody's views. The point that you are raising is about bringing in discipline, party discipline, and also action on those who perform badly. There must be those, and it doesn't mean when you were saying unity, you must cover up corruption. Act on corruption. My experience is that if you have a united ANC, you can deal with corruption because nobody turns around to say, I'm being investigated because I'm in so-and-so slate. You eliminate that. This is my experience. If you get a united ANC at a party level, at an alliance level, no one can take a chance because they know if you are wrong, you'll be dealt with. But if there are factions, you hide around on the basis that I'm working with so-and-so and we are being hit because of that. And somebody hides the fact that they're actually involved in irregularities and corruption. That is what we need to deal with. So we must bring back strong action on those who do not behave properly and those in government. We must be able to say the people who do not perform, there must be a difference to those who actually perform. There must be some disincentives. You must be able to act on people who do not perform, and particularly where people are acting in a way that's showing public disapproval, that is bringing the ANC to disrepute. We must be able to act quicker on those. We're discussing now how to ensure that even before the case is proven, in court, we must be able to ask a comrade to say, these allegations are too damaging to the organization. Maybe you should step aside until it is cleared, then we can bring you back.
With respect, Dr. Mkhize,
yes?
You have been saying this for years. You said this in the run-up to Mangaung. You said it in the run-up to Polokwane. We are back where we are. You're having a special NEC on the 11th of November, precisely because of what happened in the Eastern Cape, among other things. So it is very clear that this message of unity is not working in the organization. From the policy conference, the President closed the conference with a strong call for unity. He even suggested that the top 6 be expanded as a way to accommodate so-called losers, as a way to bring people in. We had provincial conferences where people threw chairs at each other, where people physically assaulted each other. The truth of the matter is the unity message isn't gaining traction in the ANC.
No, I wouldn't say we must give up. As the members of the ANC, we cannot give up on the African National Congress. The points that were raised during the National Policy Conference, those matters are going to be only concluded in the conference that is coming. So there's debate, there's disagreement, there's agreement on whatever issues, that's when it's going to be closed. So the fact that we are quiet about it now doesn't mean it's the end. The end is going to be at the conference, and we expect that there will be a clear decision on that. The issue of what we've been talking about over the years, you see, there's been lessons out of the Integrity Commission, because when we got the Integrity Commission, it was supposed to do exactly that. And it has gone out to talk to comrades to say, we should think you should step down. Some did step down. In other cases...
The President didn't. He showed them the middle finger.
No. Well, the issue here is that when these issues were raised, the discussion from the Integrity Commission was such that a lot of issues are being raised about legalities and so on. And we are saying we need to make a clear distinction between a legal case and an issue of ethical leadership.
Okay, let's
and
pass
that's
the
point.
question of ethics.
Yeah.
So on the ethical issues, do you think, Dr. Mkhize, that President Jacob Zuma must stand down?
That matter has been discussed in the National Executive of the ANC. As the NEC, we have got a position that we took at that level.
What is your position?
Now, my position is that once the ANC has taken a decision like that, you can't come with a new position, which is yours. That is what you have to do. At the point we're discussing the issue, there were a number of considerations that we had to take into account. And those were considerations that brought us to a point where ultimately we had agreed that the president should not step down. I don't want to get into it at the moment, but just to say that it was discussed on 3 meetings where every view was explored on the matter. But because it's generally a political issue, it had to be ultimately concluded that way.
I like what you're saying. You're saying, let's put the legalities aside. Let's look at the questions of ethics. So it's on that question, Dr. Mkhize, that I'd like for you, as the presidential candidate, to answer. Not what the NEC discussed. We know that there were 3 attempts. But when it came to Dr. Mkhize, as NEC member, as TG, what do you think? On the ethical questions, should President Jacob Zuma stand down? What is your view?
You see, the issue that we were discussing had to be about how do we approach that matter, because the approach was that at the point the Integrity Commission was supposed to deal with this issue, all these matters that were discussed mean a decision must be taken that from now on, if we think that your position, the allegations around you are bringing the organization to disrepute, we will have to disregard a lot of these legalities. So as that time will come, we will have a clear decision from the organization to be able to say to anyone, please step down, and there will not be all these arguments that we've had to face. So that is where I believe we need to be going. This conference will close that issue. So from that time on, it will be easy to deal with the issue of ethical leadership as compared to what we've had to go through, because this experience that we've gone through the past 5 years, it has not been able to get unanimity simply because we didn't anticipate some of the arguments that arose. From now on, we want to close that loophole. And from that point, we believe that we'll be acting much quicker in the case of people who have behaved in a way that is unacceptable, or those who have got very serious allegations. So I think from conference, we draw the line. We're going to have a very different approach.
Dr. Mkhize, let's start with your plans to make young people an integral part of the ANC. Well,
firstly, I think it's a very important question, because a large number of members of the African National Congress are the youth. I think for a start, let's say, when we go to this conference, we need the youth to consider a large number of younger leaders who can be part of that National Executive Committee. It's important for youth to be part of that. Now, if you look back, President Zuma has probably been in the ANC for almost 39 years. When he started, he was in his mid-30s, probably 35, 36. And President Mbeki is the same, and so on. There is a lot to be said for younger people who get into leadership positions because of their potential and their background training, but that they must grow inside the organization. It's also important because the politics of South Africa is also about issues of young people. The other opposition parties have got lots of younger leaders, so it's important for confident ANC National Executive Committee members also to be just as young as all the others. The challenges, bulk of the challenges that face the country have got to do with youth issues. Whether you talk about social issues, issues of diseases, HIV and AIDS, criminal issues, and so on, unemployment, issues of young unemployed graduates, all of those issues of a change in education, technology, the fourth industrial revolution, all of these issues, the building of the economy, the new industrialists, the CEOs of companies are young people, and so we need leaders who can match all of that. And so I believe that there's a huge opportunity to bring in young people at that level and other leaders, and other levels. It is not necessarily only to be just members of the ANC Youth League. In their own rights, we've got chairs of branches, secretaries and members of branch executive and regional executive committees who are members. When I became the MEC, I was around 38 years. And I know of a few of my colleagues who were much younger, in their 30s, I think 33, 32, who were MECs. So there is a scope for youth to be recognized as a force that is really part of growing our own timber. So I think that there's a lot that needs to be done for the young people in that regard.
Dr. Mkhize, quickly just focus on your strategy for growing the economy and, more importantly, bringing in black people in large enough numbers so that they are, in fact, the beneficiaries of the economic dividend in the country. In your opening statements, you spoke about radical economic transformation. What is radical economic transformation in your definition?
In my definition, I think it's the same general definition because this is an ANC terminology, and it did come from an ANC conference in Mangaung. It's really about trying to change the base on which the South African economy is structured, where the systems and the institutions and the patterns of ownership and the management and technical expertise with the economy are transformed and are also made more de-racialized, and they are more open to broader participation of those who have been excluded over the years. And this becomes very important because that has never been done for the past 23 years since the fall of apartheid. So going into the future, you cannot expect this economy to grow on exactly the same base that was left by apartheid. We need to broaden it, expand it, and we cannot have an entire community left out, the majority of the people are left out and are not making a contribution in the growth of the economy. But it means a lot of things need to be done. It means that there has to be a strong intervention by government to make policies that will open up the economy. The issues of empowerment that we're dealing with are still very useful. The building of creation of black industrialists, but we need to go beyond that. We have engaged a number of sectors. For example, we've been sitting with the people in the financial services sector. Here is where the major issue of transformation has to happen. The people who control this sector must know that it doesn't help us if all the assets, 7 trillion worth of assets, are in the hands of about 5 or 6 major players, say about 4 or 5 players, and then when you look at the blacks who are involved in this area, only 4.4% is controlled by blacks. It needs to be opened up. When you talk about the numbers of banks, and you've got about 4 or 5 banks at the moment, you need to be opening up most of these banks to be able to cover all the people who are left out. And a lot of people who are coming from the marginalized community must be partners and owners in the banks and not only just be using those banks as it were. When you talk about the patterns of investment, you need to redirect. who chooses who becomes a new owner is the credit ranking that the banks and some of the financiers do. And they need to be able to accept our people as professional, as having been experienced enough coming from those industries, that they can fund them and let them grow as owners of industrial manufacturing operations, to be part of huge IT and mining and all other areas. So these are the things that we need to be able to focus on. The support on the small business sector is critical, and I believe that you need to go beyond just saying that banks, as they structured, will offer some assistance there. I think we need to put up a huge amount of money on this side. If you've got 100 billion rand that's going to deal with social safety net, you need to probably start looking at another 20, 30 billion rand and call for private sector to match all of this, to go out and start investing in the townships, in rural economies, and all of this. But target young people, and of course, education is important. Skills transfer and technology transfer are very important here.
I don't think anyone will argue with that kind of an approach. What I want to ask you is, why did the ANC not do this for the 24 odd years that it has been in power? Surely you are saying that you have failed.
I'm not saying that we have failed. A mistake you cannot make is to pretend that over the 23 years nothing was happening. There's been a huge amount of achievement. When we looked at this and came with the issue of radical economic transformation, we looked at the fact that over 4 million people had houses, electricity has gone into almost every township, water, and the investment into education and all of this. But we had said to ourselves, what remains? What remains here is poverty that's deepening. What remains is inequality, is unemployment.
Why? You were in power. You are in power. Why does that remain?
We have been in power. You see, you think 23 years is a long time. It is not. It is a very short amount. It's a short amount of time. We have now had a development of a national development plan that said this is the target growth of the economy that we need to do, and there's a lot that we need to do in trying to rebuild that. So when we recognize that these challenges are remaining, it was because of the inability to deal with and tamper with the structure of the economy. This is what we're facing now. But we have had a lot of achievement over the 20 years. That achievement on its own is something that has been quite dramatic if you compare with other countries. But the fact that we have now seen it, that means we must focus on it. And I think it's important to always deal with this issue of radical economic transformation, that it is ANC approach, it's ANC policy approach. It is not something about looting. Sometimes when people fight, then they start throwing this issue up, no, it's about looting and so on. This is about the benefit to the majority of South Africans. And it's them who we owe it to, that this economy must open up and we must be able to grow. And each and every one of us here have got some skills and got some contribution to make. We must make the economy grow, but we need to be assisted. Support, financial support, technical support, skills, technology, and all of those issues are important on all of us. Issue of land is a very major issue. It's spending, and we need to also make sure that it's fast-tracked. And so all of these issues are part of the package that we need to work on.
Absolutely. Of course, my guest, the presidential hopeful and candidate, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, he's making the case for why he should be the next president of the African National Congress. Now, we spoke a lot about the ANC and some of the issues plaguing the organization. We spoke a little bit toward the end of the first hour about your plans for the economy and some of the issues that still needs to be addressed. And of course, the need for that radical change that needs to happen. Now, one of the things, Dr. Mkhize, that most people want is certainty. They want a sense of certainty around what the ANC's policies are, around key issues, whether it is how to fix the economy, how to get our education system to give us the kind of graduates that we require for that fourth industrial revolution that you're talking about. And then, of course, we're also looking for an economy that grows, an economy that creates jobs. What kind of policy certainty will you bring to the ANC when you become president? More so if one considers, for example, the absolute chaos that you have around an important sector such as the mining sector. You have a minister like Mosibenzi Zwane, who is in court being challenged by key sectors. You've had to intervene as the ANC leadership in terms of getting the parties to discuss. Just recently, the finance minister urged all the parties again in his medium-term budget policy statement to come to the table. But many people looking at South Africa are not clear on what exactly our policies are. So how do you, as the presidential hopeful, bring certainty to this policy game that many people are struggling to decipher and to understand?
Part of this issue of uniting the ANC, it's about us uniting around solving the conditions under which our people are living. If you have got the ANC uniting around the eradication of poverty, we have to take every step that we need to take to eliminate poverty, to create more jobs and to create growth. Then in that way, I think that it's important for us to say we will be focusing on a sector-to-sector intervention. Now, you're raising the issue of mining. We've had lots of engagements with the mining industry, and we agree that this is not a sunset industry. South Africa has got a huge scope there, and we also, it gives us scope even for further beneficiation in the area of industrial manufacturing. Just to take a simple example, that if, we've got iron ore, we've got chromium, we've got manganese, we've got all of these together, aluminium, but we've also got, vehicle manufacturing plants in the country. So you can actually articulate those together to a point where we can do a lot of reactivation of the manufacturing in the country so that we can increase the amount of, local content in the cars that are manufactured in South Africa. So when your automotive vehicle, manufacturers association are saying 1.4 million vehicles by 2035, you must say that the bulk of that has going to be about increasing mining, ensuring that we use a lot of it here locally, and in producing some of the raw components and the raw material, use our raw material for the components, and then invite investors who can be partnering with the South Africans, those young black professionals and engineers and so on, to create these industries inside the country. And that way you are going to be able to focus on how to build growth and at the same time revive the mining industry. The issues that are at stake in the mining industry is that we have raised the issue with them to say there has to be transformation. And then they've said, yes, they agree. The question is, we need to then resolve the tensions. The point that took the matter to court in the first instance is this terminology, or is this question of once empowered, always empowered. Now that matter, the view of ANC and ourselves was that we must resolve that issue in a negotiated process rather than getting it to go to court. Now, the second charter, we also believe that you can resolve a lot of issues through a negotiated arrangement where we can facilitate to mediate when there are deadlocks, but not to actually get the court to take this matter up there. But there are many other sectors.
So let's just get back to Minister Zwane, because we have a situation here where this minister is seen as a key enabler of Gupta-led state capture. His appointment at 9 o'clock in the evening by way of a 2-paragraph statement led many people to believe that the decision to appoint him was taken without consultation. Are you satisfied with Minister Zwane's performance?
Well, let's deal with the two issues we are raising. The first issue relates to how there are challenges in that department. We have engaged the minister, and we will continue to do so as the ANC. And we have also engaged the chamber, and we keep encouraging the chamber and the minister to come together to resolve this issue, and we believe that an engagement at that level is what is most important. The second issue is around the issues of capture. That matter is a matter that we believe needs to be dealt with through a proper and thorough investigation. So I believe that the commission of inquiry is the main way of being able to deal with that. So anyone else who's being mentioned in that issue of state capture has to go through the state capture. They must explain themselves. They must go through the commission. They must explain themselves. And all those issues, the allegations, the emails, all the stories that are coming from state-owned enterprises and all the companies that are involved, we need all of that to be exposed to the public so we know exactly what happened, so that we can put a closure on that matter and then take the necessary action on those individuals that are involved.
Now, you've described state capture as an embarrassment.
Yes.
Surely, Dr. Mkhize, it is criminal. It's much, much more than an embarrassment.
Where the commission will come in, it will help us to separate, because there will be clearly instances where you will find that criminal activities have taken place, in which case people have to be charged, and we must accept that. Where there are instances where there's further investigation that is required, people need to be investigated, and we must accept that. Where there's proper prosecution, that has to be done. All of those things, we may even need to create legislation to define the relationship between individuals, business, families, and everyone, so that from now into the future, we no longer get into this kind of thing. So it is everything that must be exposed through a proper, non-partisan, efficient commission that will be able to subpoena people and dig into all these stories that we're talking about. So when I said it was an embarrassment, it is indeed an embarrassment, but indeed if it has got criminal activities, we expect that out of the commission we must be able to get to the bottom of that. There has to be action. There may well be instances where we as a party will have to act on individuals, and we must be open to that possibility as well.
Absolutely. It is coming up for 9:15. This is, of course, the Karima Brown Show. You are listening to 702. We are going to be throwing the questions open to the floor now. Can I have the indicators? We've, of course, done some housekeeping during our ad breaks. Can I have the first question with the lady in front here with the yellow on? Can I have the mic to the lady here? She's the first question. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Pindi Msomi. I'm the Group CEO for Hazile and a member of the ANC Progressive Business Forum, which the TG very much supports, and we are grateful. Gwabe, my question to you is, talking about unity from a business front, how would you seek to ensure a collaborative effort and support of Black economic participation, taking into consideration some of the failures of EBBE, where we saw fronting continued, and again looking at how the link would be with the Black industrialist programs or others to ensure that Blacks are unified and they are part of the economy of a country that they also belong in.
All right, can I have the second question? We're going to take bunches of 4, and then we're going to get the TG to answer. The second question over here, the second row, Clive.
Thank you very much. My name is Colin Malachi, the Zonal Secretary of the ANC in Ekurhuleni. I've got only 2 questions. One question is that how is the TG going to assist when he becomes president to implement the most important resolution of the ANC of officially making post office a state bank? Because we've been seeing state institutions, including departments, literally rejecting that resolution of getting post office to also assist with salaries of, as the first stage, salaries of state employees. The second stage, the issue of the SASA issue, the grants given to our grandparents and those who are disadvantaged. We feel that must be the first stage. The second issue is the issue of SOEs. We've been seeing a lot of SOEs losing integrity, and also not only losing integrity, but not even making profits, getting a lot of bailouts from government. How is he going to, with his experience in the state, how is he going to assist to resolve such matters? How is he going to get the right people to the right positions? The last question is on the issue of the integrity of the ANC, because we must accept that the ANC, every day, society is losing confidence in the ANC. And the ANC can continue to say that they are leaders of society, but they are unable to win over the hearts of the people. When people see the ANC, they see a corrupt organization. Now, how is the TG, when he becomes the president, going to assist together with this collective to regain the integrity of the ANC? The last question is the issue of...
I see people abuse the mic when they have it. Okay, we're going to give you the last opportunity.
Yeah, the last question. We have seen a lot of cult in the ANC, where people print T-shirts of their faces, and when they get elected, people tend to think that they're the organization. And we've seen even the current president of the ANC, when he's attacked, the ANC is unable to defend him because society sees him as the ANC. How are we going to make the ANC to be above individuals who are in the ANC?
All right, Eusebius at the back.
Zweli Mkhize, presenter here at 702. Dr. Mkhize, last week your fellow contender for presidency, Ms. Sisulu, trended for all the wrong reasons when she said, amongst many things, that she believed that she was raped in relation to Fezekile, also known as Kwezi. In a country where women and girls have their bodies attacked on a daily basis, I want to ask you, do you believe Kwezi? Do you believe Jennifer Ferguson? And I wonder if you can answer unambiguously.
All right, let's start with the last questions and we work our way back. Dr. Mkhize.
Well, thank you very much for the last question. It's a question that faced one quite a while back, and the basis of the statement that I wrote was answering that question. It was probably a question that you could have asked before the entire court matter, the court case that it went through the way it did. For me, it has been a very traumatic situation because the people involved here, including Fezeka, were very close to us, and these were people. She's someone who had grown up, right in front of me. And so when this whole episode happened, it was a very painful situation. But because the matter has gone through to court, I don't think one wants to get further into the discussion, other than the fact that, she is no more, and I really wonder whether we will ever get to a point where we can, put the matter to rest. I put a whole statement, and I would like to make the statement available on my involvement, on what happened and that, and my views at that level. But I think as South Africans, we are facing a serious problem of the issue of rape, abuse of women and girls and children that we have to mount a very strong campaign to deal with. And obviously, this has to involve us at our personal level and at the level of leadership of both government and the ruling party. We have mounted a campaign to try and bring up the awareness, even amongst our own members, to lead the fight to ensure that we can eliminate violence against women and children. It will be most painful for any one parent to be facing a situation where her child has been abused, and therefore it is something that we have to continuously say. We have to stamp it out as South Africans in general. But I had a long statement which I had made, which I don't want to repeat on the matter, because of the way this matter had happened. I would really not want to get back to that issue. But I also think as much as it's an issue that is very painful and continues to happen at different levels, but nevertheless, insofar as the issue of Fezeka is concerned, seeing that also she is no more, we must try and find a way of putting it to rest. I don't know how we can do that, but I must say that it's one issue. Part of the reason why I even had to make the statement is because there are deep feelings one has about that whole matter. So
Dr. Mkhize, I've had a look at your statement. In fact, it's right in front of me here. And you say, of course, in the statement that you were shocked when you learned that President Zuma and Fezeka had a relationship because Fezeka had grown up as a child in front of both you and President Jacob Zuma. And you speak about your closeness to the family and, of course, also the fact that you regarded them as part of your family. Now that you have looked back at everything, books have been written, the question around whether the law is an adequate mechanism to bring women who are raped and are sexually assaulted justice. Would you reflect on it differently? Would you still only want to be guided by the outcome of the court, or do you, as many people have asked, believe Fezeka? Do you believe that she was raped?
The question of what the legal system is able to do on this matter, I don't know how much we can change. The requirements for having to prove a case in the nature of how our Constitution works is a difficult situation. And the only issue, that question becomes relevant at the start of the matter. But, you know, if you've got an incident like this having taken place, and you ask yourself that question, the next way of how you can conclude that matter is not your personal feeling. It's a matter of how that matter has to be taken through the process that must, you know, ultimately arbitrate or rule on that matter. And once that process has gone through, it's going to be difficult to make a statement afterwards as though you've got new evidence that was not part of that court hearing. So it makes it very difficult to try and create a new discussion which is outside the process that unfolded in public, in the courts, and it was all very well highly publicized. And it's therefore difficult to go back and say you want to have a view when you cannot discount any of the issues that came out in court. So it makes it very difficult at this point. And where one believes that question would have been relevant is at the start, because it would determine how you move next with that issue. And in our instances, it was important that on the basis of the statement that she had made, that the matter goes through to the police and to the court. I sat with the police and they asked me as much as what they would have asked me about it, and as I've indicated there, also spoke to the prosecution. Of course, I had not been party to this whole thing. I just happened to assist and support the family at the time the whole incidents happened. But on the basis of her statement, that the fact that the matter went through to court, I think that was most important to be able to deal with the issue.
Dr. Mkhize, I'm going to remind you of Justice Yaqub, who in the book, and he said it publicly, that if it were up to him, he would set that court judgment aside because he believes the way in which the judge adjudicated on that matter was in fact highly irregular. But let's park that. I want to ask you your opinion, the second part of your CBS's question. Jennifer Ferguson, former ANC MP, accuses Danny Jordan, another ANC comrade, also an MP at some point, of rape. You both are your members. I'm not sure if Jennifer is still a member, but have you spoken to Jennifer Ferguson since she's made these allegations as an organization, or anyone in your organization? Have you reached out to her? Have you spoken to Danny Jordan about the matter?
I have not had the opportunity to talk to either of them. And unfortunately, it's not a matter that one has kind of worked closely with. I'm not sure if anyone in the organization has, but it's something that one can follow up on. But, when there are such serious allegations, the only way of dealing with them is to say they must not be suppressed, they must be opened up, and that whoever is accused must be taken through the due process of the law, and they must face that, and they have to answer to the questions, and they must answer to the judicial system on what actually happened at the time. And we must always ensure that we give support to those who are making the accusation, that they must not fear public pressure or disapproval as they go about this. They need to be given enough space, because it is a very, very problematic issue that we must deal with. But unfortunately, quite often, because it's something that might happen in the privacy of two people's presence, it may make it very difficult. What is important is to always make sure that we support those who are raising the complaint, so that there is nothing that stops on the way simply by the fact that someone it might be occupying a senior position or a leadership position. It must not block their ability to have access to the justice system, so that this matter must be dealt with. And at any one time, we need to be able to give that kind of support. But I think once the matter has gone through that system, it may be very difficult to use personal views to deal with it, simply because you don't have, unless you've got new issues. Now, I'm not sure what Judge Zekiakub was referring to, but being the former judge, he probably would have been able to assist us. How do you deal with a situation where you think there's the judgment has not been in the way you think it should have been done? So normally, if people didn't make the appeal themselves, we need to be able to say that someone like Judge Yakub could have made a comment, but I'm not sure about a comment that's made in private and a comment that's made by a judge as a judge, because this thing is something that has to be done through a proper system in our judicial processes. So I would not be able to comment about what he actually said. I don't even have a sense of what he was referring to. I know that for every judgment, people will have different views, but I can't comment on what the judge himself had said. I think one would like to leave it at that, just to say it is indeed a challenge that we must face and fight as South Africans, as individuals. And all of us have to be on the one side and make sure that it's exposed at every one time when it's reported.
Let's start with the question of fronting.
Yes, it's actually a very relevant question, because the problem of fronting needs to be regarded as corruption. It's fraud, it's misrepresentation. And one thing that we must encourage black business to do is to expose fronting, as to unite around fronting and corruption, misrepresentation. Because they're being abused, it actually means that someone is abusing the presence of the black entrepreneur. Instead of helping them to grow, it's actually making them a token and getting benefit when they are not making the necessary contribution of what the whole black economic empowerment policy was all about. One of the ways that I think would be very helpful is the organizations that represent black business. They need to take a whole campaign and work very hard to ensure that the people who are involved in fronting are exposed. But I also want to say that the movement towards creation of black industrialists, the whole movement of radical economic transformation, when we talk about facing the people who are in charge of the financial services sector, is precisely on this point, that it is when they understand that it is in the interest of the country to diversify ownership, to diversify the patterns of investment and ensure the inclusivity in the economy, and ensuring that there's broadening of ownership and participation, the skill transfer. All of these issues are what fundamentally needs to be achieved. And so the organization of the black entrepreneurs must unite to expose fronting. You've also got an advantage because you are part of the constituents of the government. So the government will listen to your proposals of how we can deal with the issues of fronting. Also the shortfalls and the abuse of our empowerment systems need to be exposed. Now, we've been engaging a lot of entrepreneurs in the past few years. The best way to ensure that there's proper transformation is to engage the professionals and the entrepreneurs who are in that sector. Bring them face to face with those who control that sector. We did that in the construction industry. That one meeting was extremely exciting. I mean, I can tell it was a mini TRC, people telling each other who was fraudulent, who had cheated on who, who was a partner to who, and they colluded with who. Within a very short space of time, people started opening up. For that, we were able to get to a point where the construction industry had to focus on a formula for transformation. It may not be adequate, but it certainly started creating for us a possibility. Right now, we are convening a meeting of a number of black entrepreneurs organizations, Black Business Council, APSIP, and a whole lot of them, together with banking association and those who control the asset management companies and so on and so on. We're bringing them together and we're saying, at this point, you need to talk together about what problems we are facing in the economy and how we're going to transform the economy. There's persuasion needed, but on the one side, government must be ready to do policies that's going to direct where things need to go. That, for me, is a very important, an important issue. And I said to the banks, sometimes they think when you talk about radical economic transformation, you talk about the chairpersons of the branches or the Communist Party and so on, the radicals out there. No, the real issue, people who feel most of the brunt, are the top professionals in the same institutions, in the banks, in the asset management space, in the audit space, audit firm space, and all of these. In agriculture, it's the topmost people who are black professionals, who are feeling the ceiling, the exclusion, and the irregularities and the fronting. Those are what you must confront. And I'm prepared to deal with that because at the moment, we've convened a number of these meetings and we're making the message very clear. Forget about the terminology. You don't like it, it's tough luck. It's what it means. It's a mandate to us as the leadership to make sure that we correct it. You can't correct it under a new term that is only understood by those who fear it. It must be understood by those who are complaining about exclusion. That is where we are. So I believe that there's a lot that we're going to be able to do, but it means tough engagement and very close engagement. And we've been involved in all of this, and we're hoping that we can have a summit where a lot of black entrepreneurs will be, and the topmost CEOs and chairs of these major companies and banks are going to be there. We're going to meet them in the next few days. But the point is that we must engage directly and not beat about the bush. The economy needs to be fixed. It must be fixed by those who control it and those who are aspiring to be part of the leadership. And that's where we need to go.
TG, can we get to the question around how to deal with state-owned companies? Here it is the state, the government. You have the opportunity to put your best to work. You have the opportunity to lay out your policies. You don't have to even negotiate with the private sector, but it's a mess, hey?
Look, state-owned enterprises, the issues are complex but straightforward. The first issue here is that the state-owned enterprises are very important as part of the drivers of the economy, particularly with the specific services that need to be owned by the people as South Africans. Now, they have to be run efficiently. That means the people must be appointed. They must be appointed on basis of merit, on their professionalism, on their experience, on their capacity to lead. The challenge happens when a state-owned enterprise goes down and there's no consequence to those who are actually running it. You can't continuously run down an entity and still expect to continue managing it. There's no consequence. All enterprises must be working on the basis of being able to make profit. They must be able to offer the services that they are supposed to have, and they must also be in such a way that where there is poor performance, there must be disincentive, there must be action on those. So that's what I believe needs to be acted upon. Now, when it comes to some of the problems that we're going through now, there has to be an exploration into a number of things about it. For example, we went and looked at what Chinese did. Chinese did two things which were interesting. One, amongst the state-owned enterprises, they separated some of them and created a degree of competition amongst them, both owned by the state, but it actually meant you are not forced to only procure your services from one. You can procure from another one, and therefore amongst themselves, they know you don't perform, you ship out. You have a problem. So that began to change them. The second issue was that when they needed to raise money, they actually opened a little bit of it to some private involvement, and so they still keep control. They control the thing, they appoint the chairman, and it's still a state-owned enterprise, but then they bring in a degree of private participation, and whatever way you define it, it then means that instead of us taking the money away to go and support SAA, we could have used the money to go and support other service delivery requirements of the government. So I think that we need to create a balance at that level, and it can be done. The issue of cult, excuse me, the ANC has had a very strong tradition of collective leadership, where all the leaders contribute to the overall image of the African National Congress, and they've done a brilliant job. The respect of the ANC over the years, the confidence, has actually been as a result of the conduct of the leaders as political leaders and as individuals. So it is important to always ensure that the ANC, if we go into the ANC, we must go there to add value, not to actually use the ANC to enhance ourselves at the expense of the organization. And I think it's important for us to always remember, as far as the ANC is concerned, we were taught that the ANC is bigger than everybody, that we contribute everything. Even if you go to our constitution, we say all our skills, our energies, we shall contribute for the well-being and success of the ANC. That needs to be kept all the time, because there are instances where you look around and you think somebody now is looking at the ANC and is saying, I'm going to use the ANC so that I can benefit this position or that particular contract and so on. And that needs to be fought and stopped. You will notice now that whilst I've accepted to be I'll make myself available for nomination, I have avoided getting to put up something that's personal about it. That is really because we think it's important to bring the image of the organization first, and then us as serving the organization. That, I believe, has been very, very important. It is important for us to always stick to the organization, ensure that its traditions are not transgressed, ensure that its image are not offended as such, that we should not necessarily build individuals to be appearing as bigger than the ANC, but that all the members and leaders of the ANC are subservient to the ANC. We must be prepared to take a sacrifice for the ANC to grow. We must be prepared to serve for the ANC to grow. We must be prepared to forego certain ambitions, certain interests for the ANC to go. So even in this instance, it's important, the point that I'm making, that part of building unity has to be about ensuring that all of us are prepared to serve together, to serve under one another, to lead each other or be led by one another. That is important for us, because that is how you're going to be able to have a situation where we can all fit inside this organization and therefore generate the confidence that we've got. One of the experiences that I went through as I was talking about how we had to deal with the faction was to go to conference and say to the comrades, look, we have these leaders that you have nominated, but let's agree that we need these leaders to work together to serve this organization. In which case, when we go through this thing, we're going to nominate them and elect them on the basis that they will fit somewhere in this organization. It doesn't have to be, unless I'm elected into this position, we can rather break the ANC. The ANC can split because I can't work with so-and-so, I can't work with so-and-so. The ANC is not about individuals. The ANC is about our people, it's about the masses, it's about the South Africans who expect direction from the African National Congress.
Dr. Zweli Mkhize, let's take some calls. We've got some very patient callers that have been waiting to engage with you. Let's go to Midrand. We've got Felix on the line. Felix, good evening. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind? Felix, are you there? All right. I think we have a problem with our lines. Producers, let me know.
Hello?
Hi, Felix, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I can hear you.
Okay, what is your question to Dr. Mkhize?
It's not a question as such. I just wanted to pass a quick comment about Dr. Zweli Mkhize.
Yes.
On my personal opinion, I think Dr. Zweli Mkhize is the right candidate for the presidency. Why I say so is that I see him as a man with integrity, and also the fact that he has served in various government departments and even some institutions. I see him as a man who is able to bring a balanced view that will be able to integrate all aspects of governance without a challenge. And also, having started politics at an early age, I see him being able to integrate the youth into the system of government or politics or whatever we might decide to call it. So in my own personal view, I see him as the right candidate for the president.
All right, that's Felix giving a thumbs up to Dr. Zweli Mkhize for the position of President of the African National Congress. Zanele in Tembisa, good evening, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good evening, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Zanele. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I would like to ask a question to Dr. Mkhize.
Go for it.
I would like to know how can he think he can fix, he can unify the ANC when the corruption is down to the councillor level, and the sheer scale of the problem when the whole ANC is corrupt will not be fixed. It's just where there's a new leader. And I also want to know what he's going to do about the councillors who are involved. Will he is going to fire them? How will he find them? That's my question to him.
All right, Zanele's question, Dr. Mkhize, will you fire corrupt councillors?
No, thank you for the kind comments of the previous caller. Thank you very much for the confidence. The comment that Zanele is making, it's actually a sad perception to think that the entire ANC is corrupt. It is not so. In fact, the drive to fight corruption is much stronger amongst the members of the African National Congress even before we get to the public. Some of the negative things, some of the reports about who is corrupt and what things are taking place are coming from our own members. And so it is important for us to understand, to understand that the ANC members want to see the label of corruption not being associated with the African National Congress. And because of that, I believe that there is a good base from which to start. Now, I come from that history where when I became premier, one of the things that we put up front was that we want an image of a clean government where there's no tolerance to corruption. And we did it. And I'm saying it is possible that it can be done. The point about it is two issues that are important. The first one is this one that is very nagging, that I keep saying that we need to close it at the conference, of asking people to step aside until the investigations are done. That's very, very important. But the second one is about acting on those who are found to be corrupt. That action, quite a lot of work is being done, and a lot of people have been acted upon. Some MECs, some mayors, and some MPs and councillors have been acted upon. Some officials in government have been acted upon. I think that we need to be able to match the expectations of the public so that there's no sense of tolerance that we create. But beyond that, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done ahead of time to deal with this. We need a mechanism that monitors the conduct of people. If we had a kind of a mechanism where when there are reports that are brought up, we act on them and report, we investigate immediately and then act quickly. Once, many years back, I got involved in a situation where we actually had to fire the entire executive. You need guts to be able to take firm decisions. And this, for me...
Do you have that guts?
Well, we've been through that before. I do. I do. Yes. You see, you have to act on firmness. At the end of the day, the ANC is not our thing. We found it, and people own it. And therefore, our job is to do our task. And when you are in a position of leadership, you have to always balance that you don't act on frivolous allegations, but when there's clear evidence of misdemeanor, corruption, and all of this, you have to be able to be firm when you deal with it. This is what people are criticizing the ANC about. It's not so much that, the ANC is corrupt. It's just that it seems sometimes some certain things take long and so on. But I believe that we have, as the ANC, seen this point, and we are working very hard to ensure that from the conference, once we close all of these weaknesses, we should be able to act much faster and ensure that people can be convinced of our resolution to fight corruption.
Okay, we've got one last caller that we're going to give a shot. He is from Waltevreden Park, Melvin. Melvin, thank you so much for your patience. A quick question to Dr. Mkhize.
Okay, good evening, Karima, and good evening, Dr. Mkhize.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question goes around employment equity and also how it fits in with radical economic transformation. And then, so I'll start here. It's a hard-fought victory, employment equity. And the reason why I say this is if we look at the 17th annual report done by the Commission for Employment Equity, we see that we are we still, we're just not making it. We're stalled, we're stagnant, transformation is not happening. So that in itself, there needs to be a realization that something needs to happen. So let's go and look at what Minister Mildred Oliphant is saying. So she says there's 72 companies now that are under review simply because they're standing outside of our constitution. They don't want to apply employment equity. So my question to Dr. Mkhize is, my sincere belief is that the ANC should make good on their promise that employment equity should not have a sunset clause because we're light years away from achieving transformation. The second part of this is that there are sectors in our economy, mostly and notably large manufacturing organizations that also are lacking this transformation. So what are we going to do about that to get ourselves momentum, to get the critical mass towards transformation, especially in the employment equity space? And then
We've lost Melvin there. Dr. Mkhize, we're running out of time.
Okay.
So if you could quickly answer those questions. I want to go through some of the SMSs that have also come through. As you can see, there are stacks.
Yes. No, I think it's a very strong point that we need to deal with the issues of transformation. I think compliance, to make sure that everybody complies is important, and that there needs to be direct engagement continuously. What we found sometimes, we look through the mining companies. You can look at the company who owns it and it complies with all the Black Economic Empowerment credentials and so on. Then you go to those who do services. Those who are involved in, various aspects of the procurement system, a lot of them get away without it, and nobody worries about them because they are working with the private sector. Some of them don't even deal with government. We need to be able to focus even on that space and say to them, we looked at some of these. The last time I saw the top 10 companies, not more than 40% of them were actually having, the empowerment as part of those companies. Someone needs to sit through and engage them directly, and bring them into contact with people who work on that particular space. But it is about monitoring, it's about action. It's about ensuring that we engage continuously.
All right, Dr. Mkhize, let me just go through some of the SMSs. So you were asking, for example, about Dr. Zak Yacooub's message around the trial. One of the SMSs that came through here says, trials, and this is a quote from Justice Yacooub, trials and judges do not decide the truth. Sometimes truth and justice are not on the same side. That is, of course, Justice Yacooub. That's why citizens must not defer uncritically to courts, even if you respect the court's ruling. It's not a substitute for applying your own mind in a common sense way to the known facts. So dodging questions of rape by referring to the courts is socially irresponsible. It is dangerous and disingenuous, and it's a letdown for women facing low odds of legal justice. Shocking from Sisulu and Mkhize both. That is from Sipho in Soweto. Another SMS saying, TG, during your term as chair of KwaZulu-Natal, as a province, as a premier and provincial chair, there was relative unity in the province. The last 2 years, the unity has collapsed. What is your plan plan for KZN. Another tweet saying, please ask Dr. Zweli Mkhize if he was president now, how he would deal with the AG's report, which says that ANC thugs stole 47 billion rand. That is from S. Buddha. Another tweet from Mbuyiseli. There has been political killings in KwaZulu-Natal since the 1980s in one form or the other. Dr. Mkhize must not be revisionist in history of history. Another person, Tsebo from Mpumalanga. My question to Dr. Mkhize, by contesting the current deputy president, do you disobey the Polokwane resolution on the deputy president becoming the next president, or are you saying that the resolution was never made, we dreamt about it? And that's from Tsebo in Mpumalanga. Now, we've got a minute to get your response. I'm going to ask you to respond to Mr. Tsebo from Mpumalanga, who says that by contesting the deputy president, are you disobeying the Polokwane resolution?
No, it's not disobeying. If I may just ask the member to look at the Constitution, it says any member can be nominated and elected to any position, so that is what happens. Yes, the deputy president should also be given as much opportunity to be nominated and be considered, and so that is what we're doing. And I think that it's important to say the ANC has had to deal with a lot of issues of leadership, and when we face those issues, we must know that it is about members at that conference. If it was that easy and straightforward, there would not be a need for the nominations, there would not be a need for the conference to decide. We'll simply say, well, this one is sorted, worry about the others that are coming. And that's not the case. So I think we need to manage it with a bit of sensitivity there.
TG, as a final question for the evening, I'm going to ask you, you said you must be prepared to lead and be led. Who are you prepared to be led by if you don't make it as president of the African National Congress? Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma or Cyril Ramaphosa?
The word of the conference is final. I will take what conference says.
All right, that is where we leave it for now.
Karima Brown on 702, weekdays 8 to 10 p.m.